First Impression, a podcast about movies and where we meet them. Every week, me, Devin Warner, and a guest go to a screening that I've suggested, or in this case, they've kind of added to their to-do list, and we discuss the film and how attending the screening affected our impression of it. This week, I have returning to the show Evasive from YouTube on what I hope is the first of many guest choice episodes. Now, you know, as my final question of every episode, I ask my guest, what is like a really obscure or just specifically important to you movie that other people might not prioritize, that you'd love to go see if it showed somewhere? And I checked my text literally a week after we recorded the last episode. You texted me and said they're playing this movie coming up here soon. You described it as something that like screens rarely.
Yeah, well, it used to be a lot more rare, but I've learned that in the years since it's like it's on Tubi now. It's not actually that hard to find.
Yeah, the king of streaming services.
But I had not seen it since I watched it on Blu-ray like 8 years ago.
Yeah, I just had your description of it to like go off of in terms of like where can you find it. So it was really kind of bewildering to find out that we were gonna like go see it so soon. In fact, like I said, you're the first person to come back and do a film specifically that you said you wanted to.
Yeah, and this was showing just one night. It was like a special. It was showing at like a bunch of AMCs.
Yeah, so
but
the advertise. First off, we should say we're talking about Cowboy Bebop the movie, alternate title Cowboy Bebop Knocking on Heaven's Door. I've not seen that in any. It's just on the Wikipedia.
Love an alternate title.
I've never seen that. And
I think it was like the
like
Japanese, like
the
full
Romaji.
Japanese title. Yeah.
But the advertisement that it was playing as part of was the Anime Expo cinema events, which appeared to be mostly the works of Satoshi Kon paired with like the old reliable of Ghost in the Shell, which is in every anime like screening series.
Yeah.
And this.
Yeah. And it wasn't, I don't think it was related to this event, but they're also showing the Gurren Lagann movies recently too.
I think those were Fathom event because I was looking this up to see.
Those were Fathom, but it was around the same time.
Yeah, they're probably like feeding off each other. I find that like most of the time Fathom events or like special screening events at like chain theaters, AMCs and stuff, those are almost exclusively anniversary showings. So like you'll be like, oh, it's Gone with the Wind's 80th anniversary.
Yeah.
Anime and faith-based films is like 99% of what Fathom is.
Yeah. There was, when I was in high school, I was in marching band. And every year they do a Fathom event at AMC where it was like the marching band drum corps international world championships on a theater screen. And like all the band nerds would go to AMC to watch that.
Yeah.
I never went, but I heard about it.
I feel like this has changed a lot in the last year or so. Things like that are non-film performances. Are those sorts of things going to go away because Taylor Swift and Beyonce had such a big year last year?
I mean, I feel like if anything, like movie theaters like obviously suffered for a bit during COVID, but I feel like since coming back, I've seen them more and more do special screenings, which I feel like special screenings used to just be for like smaller theaters, like art house theaters and like local movie theaters. But now more and more you see AMC and Regal doing these like a one night only showing of an anime movie. Like, and I think that's important if those theater chains want to stay open at all, because where you can watch these movies wherever. People are going for the theater screen because nobody has a theater screen in their house unless they're filthy rich.
I mean, that's the thing is I always have a hard time predicting which of these types of screens are going to end up being like, this is actually specifically in relation to this, which ones are going to be really full and which ones there's not going to really be any interest in. It's a total, in my opinion, in my experience, it's a total crapshoot. So like I've seen, especially we saw this at the AMC Kips Bay, which is on the eastern side of Manhattan. It's an AMC I like quite a lot, but the theaters are all really small. Like some of them have only like 20 seats in them. So when they do specialty screenings like this, I book right away because I'm terrified of like,
it's going to fill up.
Not being able to get a seat. So I booked this ticket almost 2 months prior to the actual screening date. And you maybe like a week and a half beforehand texted me that you wanted to bring a friend with. And my thought is like, oof, I don't know if you'll be able to get them in.
Yeah.
Here's our seat numbers. I hope something nearby is available. And I text you a couple of days later and you're like, are you, or it's like, were you able to? Like, oh yeah, it's fine. I'm like, wow, I guess somebody canceled last minute. You got lucky.
Well, I think part of it also was that it was AMC Kips Bay, which if you're not a New Yorker, like this movie theater is annoying to get to because there isn't a subway station right nearby. Like you kind of have to walk, and it was really cold that day too. It was really cold.
Yeah, the closest is the 6, which is like close to a 10-minute walk away.
Which is not bad in the summer, but I saw I saw Minions 2 there. So that was where I experienced. That was the theater that I experienced the seeing teenagers in suits.
The Gentle Minions.
Yeah, the Gentle Minions. I love that. But like I'm pretty sure that the screenings at like AMC, like in Times Square, were probably like closer to being full.
Times Square is like most of where this stuff happens. I've seen, this is not the first specialty one I've seen at a Kips Bay before. I've done oh shoot, it was actually, it's related to our last one. It was one of the Hideaki Anno Shin movies, the middle one. It was Shin Ultraman, and that was like totally full. Like the day I was buying it, like when they were dropped on Fathom events, like I had to like buy less than great seats in like a filling up theater, and I had that issue where you go to buy it and it's like this seat is taken. So you kind of so like my point, which being we got to Cowboy Bebop. I know this is a beloved property. People really like this. We got there. I'm like, this will be fun. This will be a great audience, and it's like maybe a quarter full. Like it's not. There's not that many people in there. There wasn't nobody.
But I think that a lot of that was it was really cold. We were at the theater that was furthest from the train station.
Yeah.
And also that we were seeing it in Japanese, which in the case of this series, like I think even the creator has said he likes the English dub better.
Yeah. As somebody who's like not super into anime, I have always kind of been of the opinion, like as with like foreign film, the assumption should be, well, like you should default to the sub most of the time. Right.
Yeah.
Would you say that's generally true with anime overall?
I mean, for me, I almost always watch the dub just because like I'm like barely ever paying like 100% full attention to the screen. So it's easier for me, especially if the voice acting is good, like to have the dub so that at least I know I catch everything. Even if I have to like look away from the screen for a second, I have to rewind and go back to the line I missed. There are some things that I don't do that for. Like I've played all the Yakuza games and those all take place in Japan. Very, very Japanese games. And the more recent ones in the series got more popular, they started dubbing in English, but I'm still playing them in Japanese because I'm used to those voices.
Yeah.
And also some of the English dubs are terrible. So
yeah, that's the thing is I think a lot of times an issue with dubs is that they're kind of in the same way that like, you know, not to like talk shit about these voice actors, but like the Hungarian dub of just some American, like The Simpsons or something is like, well, you never hear about those being like, that's a great performance. So that's kind of, I always think I'm like, maybe that's the equivalent.
When I was a kid, like this like blew my mind when I was younger. We had a German au pair nanny, like a live-in nanny from Germany when I was in like middle school. And I remember, because this was like when I was really starting to understand like movies and stuff was back then. And I remember asking her once like, oh, how do you know how to speak English so good? She's like, oh, I just have watched a lot of movies and TV shows. I'm like, don't you watch that in German? And she's like, no, I'm never going to watch a German dub of an English movie.
Yeah, and
I was like,
terrible.
why? And she's like, because usually the German dub actors are terrible. And I had never thought about that before, but that makes complete sense to me. Like, I think as people who speak English, we're spoiled a lot of the time because these dubs are often really good. And in other languages, they just don't get that same kind of talent.
Yeah. So it's not like a universal thing that you can rely on. Like I know that like all the Studio Ghibli movies are usually like a lot of effort is put into those dubs.
Yeah. What's crazy about those dubs to me is even the child actors they get end
usually
up
pretty good.
Well, like Totoro had Elle Fanning and Dakota Fanning.
Yeah.
When they were little kids, they were not famous. They just happened to pick them out. Like they knew how to pick these voices.
Yeah.
Like,
and they put a lot of effort into casting them right. And I think because most of them are directed by Miyazaki, there's a perceived level of prestige to it.
Yeah.
That people they actually put real performances into them instead of just reading the lines.
There's one there's one dub that I've heard about it, and I'm like, I wish that was what they went with. There was The Secret World of Arrietty,
Mhm.
which is a Ghibli movie. There's 2 English dubs of it. One was produced for the British release, and one was produced for the American release.
Mhm.
And the American release one is the only one you can find. You can't find the British one anymore. The American one had like some Disney Channel kids. The British one had Saoirse Ronan and Tom Holland
Yeah.
before they were famous,
Mhm.
and you cannot find that version anymore. It's like, I
Like
think
it's not on any like old DVD
I
rips
think
or anything?
maybe like you'd have to get like a British, like I think it's only available on like British DVD, like from when it was first printed. But the only other version you can find streaming for rent anywhere is the one with Disney Channel voices.
Yeah, I think they just kind of, well, they're like, well, that's not the people we're trying to promote, which is funny now because Tom
Yeah.
Holland is like a big Disney guy.
Yeah.
But,
No, for sure. And it's like, I don't know. I was just thinking about like, I've kind of always like gravitated toward dubs just because they're easier for me. And like a lot of these voices, like I've heard them so many times that like, oh, I can pick out like, oh, that's the same guy who voiced this
that's
character.
the show to you. Yeah. For me, I have 5 years of Japanese. So like with the actual specific,
well, that's different.
With the actual specific case of anime and Japanese films, I can understand, like I can listen to it very well. I can't speak it super well. But I can understand it well enough that I generally don't have to like, I'm not as laboriously reading subtitles. Like I was watching a Korean movie the other day, and I was the last non-English language film I had watched prior to that was Japanese, and I like picked up on the fact that I was having to put in more effort with the Korean. I'm like, I have to spend more time looking at the bottom of the screen, actually reading it, doing that like up down that you kind of have to deal with when you're dealing with subs.
Yeah, not the same, but I have a little bit of Spanish in me because I was raised by like Spanish. We had Spanish speaking babysitters when I was really little, and I took Spanish like every year of school. So like when I watch a movie in Spanish, I actually do find myself picking up on like half of what they say without having to read the subtitles. And even sometimes catching like when the subtitles are just completely rewording what they said. Like, I don't know. I imagine it's very different when you've taken like these Japanese movies must be so different when you actually can pick out certain words.
It's mostly that like things like common phrases and stuff, I don't have to like if there's short lines of dialogue where people are just kind of informing each other of things, I can pick up on that sort of thing, and I don't have to spend the entire conversation looking down at the bottom of the screen. This is the first time we're doing a movie at an AMC besides a new release. And I'm actually really glad that we have the opportunity to, because this is still how I and most people in New York and LA and Chicago, like even who have other options, this is how most people in all places are still seeing their movies at these chain theaters. So it's good to reflect that that's like still an important element of like theater going in the city.
Like in New York, we have, I mean, I still feel like most of the movies I go to are at AMC or Regal because there's Angelica and Alamo Drafthouse and Williamsburg theaters. But I just find myself going to the AMC because they have the most convenient screenings. They have the $5 Tuesdays. They have the awards accounts. You know,
it's mostly just I'm like 9 times out of 10, if I'm seeing a new wide release, it is just easier to go there. Like you said, for like maybe the single biggest reasons there are like their options.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to Alamo Drafthouse in Brooklyn a lot the last 2 years because I used to live near there. I think you just kind of go whatever theater, like your default is whatever theater is closest to you.
Do you have a favorite in the city? Because I actually have a ranking of them.
Yeah, I don't have a favorite, but the one that I'm most connected to was AMC. What was your list? AMC Village.
The Village?
Yeah, because that was the one that was on the NYU campus.
I've never been to that one. What do you think of that one?
There was that and a Regal. It's by the one by Union Square if you're a New Yorker. I just have a special connection to that theater because that was my theater when I was in film school. So a lot of my film school moments there were like I remember seeing Get Out in that theater at like a matinee showing on a Saturday, and like it was just packed full of people like yelling at the screen, having a great time. I saw Avengers. I saw like the big event. I saw Black Panther in that theater. I saw the big Avengers movies in that theater. I saw even just like weirder screenings. Like I remember I saw Ready Player One in that theater, and I saw it alone on a really powerful edible, and remember nothing about that experience except for like I still don't think I can say I've seen Ready Player One because I was too far gone to remember a single thing about it other than like some of the really freaky CGI. This was like in college when I was still new at this stuff. So
I hadn't seen it. I was filling in some Spielberg gaps earlier this year and finally watched it at home. I'm like, I think it's kind of good, but like I think in a different way than most people are actually going to enjoy that.
Yeah,
movie.
I just remember that it looked like video game graphics, which is exactly what it was going for. So.
It does intentionally. I think intentionally.
Yeah. Unlike there was like Final Fantasy Spirits Within from like 2001, where people were like, "This looks like video game graphics," and it's not supposed to.
Where it simultaneously looks like it's landing in the uncanny valley, but also not even attempting to like look like something that would be recognized as a human being. I think that movie's like kind of good because it like Spielberg. Maybe the single individual most responsible for like the way we engage with pop culture and the way that we like see it as like filmic art. It's him kind of like looking at it and being like, what the fuck is wrong with you nerds that you want to live your life this way? Like, really? I made you Jaws and you turn it into this. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. That whole movie is a blur. I got to watch it again sometime.
I mean, like all that being said, I think there are some interesting things at play. I still think it's like best case a 7 out of 10. Like it's not so good that you like it's integral. I just think there's some interesting stuff.
We should start talking
about Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah. Not that like, I mean, this.
Yes.
There's one anime that's been talked about to death. It's this one and Evangelion.
Yeah, I know. And we're really, well, I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth. It's like, do you want to talk about something that has been over discussed, or like, do you want to like try and throw out your own take on it? I think it's still valid.
I think what's interesting to me is when people like give their own personal history with stuff like this, because this has been watched, like series like this have been watched so many times by so many different people all across the world at different ages, at different points in their life. Like for me, this was one of the first anime series I ever watched from beginning to end. I watched it at the very end of high school, on like, it was like 1, 2, 3 Kiss Anime, or it was like some off because it wasn't streaming on anything back then. Back then, you could only ever get it on Blu-ray or DVD.
I feel like this is the sort of this is in my mind like the classic Adult Swim 2 a.m. anime. So like this was in syndication a lot.
That was how a lot of people watched it. Was like
that
not episodes out of order, 1 o'clock in the morning on Adult Swim. Like
it's really funny because there's only 26 episodes of this. It's very funny the idea that like they would play. I feel like they had like 2 separate 1-hour blocks every single night. Be like at like 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. or something, and they'd get through basically like a 1/6 of the series every single night. Meaning that like they would show the whole thing in a week. So if your sleep schedule was bad enough, you could technically catch the whole thing in a short period of time.
Well, what lends itself to this series is like, there is an overarching story, but a lot of the episodes were self-contained. So
the way I kind of look at it is like, it's there if you want it, you know, like if you want to go a little bit more into the lore and like how the background of this thing is set up. It's all there. It's not like there's not plenty of detail for you if you want to go for it.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you want to just watch 20 minutes of something and then have no further buy-in, like you don't have to be watching anything, like you don't have to know all the info. You don't even necessarily have to watch them.
Like when I was first, I remember like when I wanted to show this series to people, I would show them the Waltz for Venus episode first, not the first episode, because to me, the Waltz for Venus episode perfectly summed up what the show was about and what the show was like.
I don't remember all the title. Which one is that?
That's the one where they go to Venus and there's the guy who's like, oh, I want you to teach me how to fight. And then he finds out that he's like trying to support his mom and like trying to get her that rare flower.
I vaguely remember that. It's like, I'm like trying to keep them all. That's kind of the other thing too, is like
it was like episode 7, 8, or 9. I think it was episode 7.
So I guess I would say like in terms of pacing with the series itself, to be totally honest with you, the first like third to half of it, I had a little bit of a harder time getting into it. I think
for sure.
I did end the series looking forward to my next rewatch, which is not always the case even with a shorter show. I liked it a lot, but I found the first time, I think it's really asking you to pick up on a lot of information all at once.
Yeah, it is. And I think that when you do watch it again later, try watching it in English.
I think I was going to, it didn't really like occur to me because I was like, I'm going to watch this new show. I'll just watch it in the sub. My opinion being like, well, that's the original interpretation.
Well, this is a very rare case where the dub is so well renowned. It's also, and part of that also is because it was the dub that was usually playing at 1 o'clock in the morning
so it's
on Adult Swim. But even the creator, I think don't quote me on this because I don't actually know if this is true, but I'm pretty sure the creator at one point said that he preferred the dub because in his mind, these characters were speaking English.
Yeah. I don't know. I liked it a lot. I just had a hard time. It'd be interesting to see how the sub might change my opinion on that. I just had kind of a hard time totally gelling with it because I felt like it was throwing a lot at me. And like it would also early on, the early episodes feel kind of almost spare, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you don't have Faye until what, episode 3 or 4?
Yeah.
You don't have Ed until like episode 12.
Yeah.
So it is just you kind of with Jet and Spike.
Yeah.
And you're trying to, they're like kind of harder to glom onto because they don't have, there's just not as complex a dynamic when it's just two guys.
It's just two broke dudes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a little bit of a harder time getting into it. And then once it was rolling and there were more elements at play, I think that means on a rewatch, I would be able to like look at, okay, well, how is this dynamic established and how will it be changed by the introduction of, X, Y, or Z?
Well, and that's how like, this is one of those animes that's like, it banks on the nostalgia. Like it's just the whole vibe of it is like, oh yeah, this feels like a late night series.
It does feel like something you'd kind of like watch like a little hazy eyed, not necessarily like high, but like, like falling asleep.
Yeah,
like
the music lends itself to that. The kind of melancholy of a lot of the episodes lends itself to that. There's a lot of like, lo-fi hip hop beats to study and chill to. A lot of them have pulled from this series. They've pulled visuals or sounds or music.
There's something so transitional about jazz. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you hear it and it just feels like the idea it's trying to convey to you is that you are between two stages.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the whole show actually kind of feels like you are stuck in this waiting phase where like the characters have history and they don't necessarily have a concrete future, but feel like they have something else down the pipeline for them. And they're just kind of like waiting. Like they're taking jobs. They're gig economy workers effectively. But it does feel like they've even if it goes unspoken, they feel like they're in between what they were and what they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of that also is that it's a Western.
Yeah. I would kind of talk a little bit about like genre blending because like this is often like cited as not an early example, but like a contemporary example of like, we are taking all these different genres and mishmashing them together to create this new thing. So with this, obviously the big ones are like sci-fi and Western, but I feel like individual episodes will kind of incorporate, like this will be a kind of a spy-ish, episode.
Or like Toys in the Attic, the one where they're just stuck in the ship with like this alien creature.
Just a bottle or it's kind of Alien basically.
Yeah. Like they obviously, sci-fi but that one like leaned into horror. Like some of the episodes lean really into horror, and some of them like the movie leaned heavily into a crime drama.
Yeah, it's something like very widely that I liked about the movie a lot is that obviously the stakes are a little bit higher and it's drawn out. It really does just kind of feel like a different bounty, at least in terms of how it sets out. It's not this big status quo changing thing that totally fucks the world.
But it feels like because the world of the movie is very clearly modeled after New York City.
Yeah.
Like very, very clearly looks like New York City. The visuals, the bits where they get out of the subway.
Yeah.
Like it feels very like they say, oh, this is on Mars. Like this is not, but it looks like New York. Mm-hmm. Like you get the comparison. Like there were some I swear there was a reference to Midnight Cowboy
I
in
think
that movie somewhere. I just don't know where.
There's no way that it's not intentional because, like you said, it very much looks like New York has cowboy in the title. I really feel like they have to be intentionally trying to draw parallels, even if they're not saying Spike is Dustin Hoffman. Like, even if it's not 1-to-1, I think they want you to be thinking of it because this is such like a vibe show. It's less about what's the actual story it's communicating and more like, are you in the right mood while you're watching this? We're trying to create kind of a mood, basically. Yeah, I don't know. It's very weird that something this kind of spare, and I don't want to say inconsequential, but every episode does it's almost set up like a sitcom in that like every episode ends with them basically where they were, broke and looking for the next thing. It's interesting to me that something with this low stakes is the level of popularity.
It's also that like this series was short, like 26 episodes in a movie, like, but it was set up in such a way that they could have kept it going for way longer. Like you look at like, I mean, One Piece, Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, they build up a cast of characters and then just have them go on adventures for 100+ episodes. Like these characters, they could have kept going and going, coming up with new scenarios to put them in. But it's a mini series. It just ends where it ends.
It wasn't that way intentionally, was it? Did they want it to keep going?
No, it was intentional. It was,
okay.
The creators like beginning to end. Here's the story. I mean, again, don't quote me on any of this. It's been years since I've actually read.
It doesn't feel like it's a shonen anime like the rest of those. You know what I mean? Like it's not that it doesn't because that's the thing is like it's serialized in that it feels like it could go on forever, but there's something about this one that I can't quite put my finger on that makes me feel like the idea of this like even having 200 episodes, like a pretty long, but nothing compared to Dragon Ball or One Piece or something, that feels off with what this thing is trying to do.
Yeah, well, part of what hits on when you watch it a second time is how it ends. Like where this is going.
Yeah.
And that makes the whole thing that much more like melancholy and emotional. And it's one of those series where like watching it a second time really changes things.
I can definitely say, and like also we'll talk about the ending. So I guess spoilers if you haven't watched Cowboy Bebop. I can't imagine why you'd be listening to this if you have not seen it. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. You should go watch it. If you haven't caught on by now, it's good. I think that's actually kind of something that in terms of like reinterpretation of the cowboy in more contemporary media, it's interesting how like the idea of something being kind of cyclical, like, cause you talk about how this is like the story ends and then there's no implication that like it's looping back like something like Evangelion is. But the idea of like, you have to go back and think exactly how he spent this period of time at the end of his life.
Yep.
Is interesting because it's Stephen King does the same thing with The Dark Tower, where that like main character is really he's really built around the archetype of the American cowboy. And then that story eventually also becomes this kind of cyclical falling back into old habits, like being stuck in your ways. And I wonder what it is about cowboys specifically that makes people, and that's also like another kind of like big genre mashup. We're throwing sci-fi elements, we're throwing fantasy, we're throwing cowboy stuff in. What it is specifically about the cowboy as a character archetype that makes people be like, yeah, I really want to make my big statement about, reincarnation and being stuck in the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you, but very clear. Like this series was the fact that it was Cowboy Bebop and not Samurai Bebop. This was like such a stupid thing for me to say, but like very clear. Like this is Western influence. They were going for like, this is a Westernized anime series. The locations in it look very like most of the locations in the series look very American. The characters sound very natural in the English dub. Like,
yeah.
And that's not just nostalgia. Like they got like actually talented. Like,
are the English voice actors, are they people that like general audiences might know?
No, I mean, they know, some people might know them now because they voice so many other things.
Okay, so are they like well-known like 90s voice actors?
They
Like
to an
within
extent,
that
yeah.
realm,
Within that realm,
you know,
yeah.
the,
Like
the Phil Lamar realm.
yeah, like the guy who voices Spike, I've heard him in like 100 different things.
Oh, okay. I know these people. Steve Bloom, he's big. Wendy Lee, I don't know. Bo Billingsley, wonderful names spelled an extremely confusing way. But
Yeah,
okay, so
all of these are like, you probably, like Wendy Lee, you've probably heard her voice before, you just didn't know it because she's been in so many things. To me also, like what makes Cowboy Bebop really special is the music. Like just the fact that most of the music was done by this one eccentric woman and her band. And that she would make the music first and they would animate around her music rather than the other way around.
That makes sense because it's like all the music is like very frenetic. And I think it's because like so much of it is like, it's really funny. I was listening to the soundtrack and it'll go back between, there'll be a track that's just all harmonica. And then it's just this like very.
Well, and the episodes are like, most of the episodes are named after different genres of music.
Mhm.
And if you notice a lot of those episodes, like the genre of music that it's named after is the main music in that episode.
Mhm.
Like I don't know which ones exactly, but like there's a bunch of examples of that throughout the series. And I just think that's so unique because I love music and I love when they like animate things to a rhythm. It's just really visually appealing.
The thing that, in terms of like the actual composure of the music itself, the thing that like certain tracks, obviously not the whole thing, that I kept hearing like similarities to, which is Michael Giacchino's score to The Incredibles, which itself is kind of like a pastiche on like old James Bond and like spy serial soundtracks as well. So I was like, that's like another whole like big populist genre that they've snuck into the influences of this thing.
Yeah.
Even though it's not really a spy show. I guess there's like some where they're like hiding. It's not really like a constant like through line is them doing espionage, but it's just kind of fun to see that there too. And it's like, I can't, like you said, they're not spying on anybody, but I was like, the vibe makes sense. Like when you throw that into the soup.
Have you seen any of the next show that Watanabe did after Cowboy Bebop?
No, what's the next show?
Samurai Champloo. It's
no, but that was another like on Adult Swim all the time.
The best way I would say it is it's like it's Cowboy Bebop but samurai. Like it's very similar. It's like two guys and a girl and a funny animal thing, traveling around doing odd jobs, trying to find like a certain person, but it has the same type of music style. Like it's a samurai show. It's Steve Bloom is voicing the main character again. So he sounds like Spike. They got the same like weird music blends, a lot of hip hop in it. Like a lot of lo-fi hip hop comes from that series.
See, that's actually really fun. My favorite episode of the series was the one where he runs into this kind of like bumbling, like very boisterous other bounty hunter. I think Adam is his name. I'm trying to remember exactly what his name is. Who every time the crew of the Bebop goes and tries to like solve a bounty, he's just kind of there getting in the way, accusing them of being the criminal. And that episode ends with him losing in a shootout to Spike, deciding he's going to retire as a cowboy. And then you see him going after it's the teddy bear bomber episode. You see him going after him like in a paddy wagon, like already arrested. This guy doesn't need to be caught at this point, on a horse saying, I'm a samurai now. It's very funny that like immediately he's like, I'll just go make the samurai show now. I actually think that's a fun idea. I'll just go do that.
No, if you like Cowboy Bebop, like Samurai Champloo is just as good.
Yeah.
But it's again, I watched that English dub too, and that's one where I think makes more sense to watch as a sub because it's in Japan. It's the late 1800s. They're samurai, but like just the way they talk, the way it's written, and the way the music is makes it feel like it's not samurai times. Like it's very modern.
So it's kind of an anachronistic. So let me ask you this: does it blend genre kind of the same way, or is it just sticking within? Like we're making a samurai show, so visually and logically, we're keeping it within that world.
It's been a while. I watched it years ago, but it does blend. It blends a lot of romance, especially. There's just certain lines and certain moments from the show that are just like, I don't know. I gotta watch it again. It's also short. It's like not that long like this one is.
As I say, compared to Evangelion, which I think is Evangelion is the same number of episodes, but required 4 or 5 movies or so also to rewatch beforehand. This was a lot easier for me to kind of get through also because what each episode asked of me was a lot less. That makes sense. This was a much easier binge. Per se.
And like in my case, like any series really, but especially like an animated series, like I'm more likely to watch it if there's less of it to watch. Like I don't know if I'm ever going to watch One Piece or if I'm ever going to watch Dragon Ball Z because like you're asking me to watch hundreds of episodes to get into it.
I have friends who are like, they've been into One Piece basically their whole life. And every time I've ever seen somebody around them be like, I've been thinking about getting into One Piece, their response is always, don't. You really should. Like, this is like, I'm in this because I've been doing it. My daddy did it before me and I'll do it till the day I die.
Yep.
You shouldn't. And they're not like, it's not that it's bad or that it gets bad. It's just that like, this is a way of life and you've already started living a different way of life. You don't have room for this.
Yeah. It's just like at a certain point, it's like that's why people like the longer series, people are like, oh, well, just watch these episodes actually, because then you'll skip past the filler and just get to the important parts. So for a shorter anime series, like I would call some of the mini series, like it's just so much an easier ask to be like, oh yeah, I'll watch 10 episodes. I'll watch 12 or 20 even.
Yeah. As a neophyte, it's nice that like this acclaimed that like is this consensus that's if not like the best, one of the best. It's really nice that I can just digest everything related to this. I don't need to even really like set aside a whole month just for this.
Yeah, you don't got to play the Cowboy Bebop PlayStation 2 game.
No. Is that any good? What is it?
I'm not sure if that exists. I'm pretty sure it exists though. Because there was an era where like
let's see if I can find
there was an era where they like every major anime got like a PlayStation 2 game. There was
let's see here.
I watched Nana a couple years ago.
You were telling me about Nana.
Love
before.
Nana. Nana got a PlayStation 2 game at some point. It was like a life sim where you play as like Nana's neighbor.
Okay. What is Nana?
It's like a slice of life about 2 girls who are both named Nana who become roommates in Tokyo in 2001. One of them's like a really like a girly girl and the other one is like a punk rocker.
Mm-hmm.
It's like very slice of life. Like, it starts off very like low key, but then the stakes get higher when one of the Nanas becomes famous. And then there's like scandals and like that, but it's like very. Like,
I just am trying to figure out where the life simulation game.
Yeah,
fits into this.
That's why when you never hear about the PlayStation 2 game because like what was that?
Speaking of, you are close. Cowboy Bebop was a original PlayStation game that was only released in Japan, but it looks like it is a third-person action game. I'm sure that's great.
I wonder, if they've never bothered to re-release it, it's a pretty bad sign.
Yeah. Is this show? I know it's like an awkward amount of foot space in between here. I always like because
I'm gonna kick that candle.
I know because I wear like.
I also like. Again, the My Friend's Basement sign is just like. This is your friend's basement.
This is we are in a basement.
You're in a basement,
and my friend holds the lease here. So.
The podcast is not called My Friend's Basement.
Podcast is called Bad First Impression. It has a different confusing title than My Friend's Basement. But
My Friend's Basement though there has to be a podcast that's called that already, right? Like there's no way that's not already a podcast title.
I don't know. We can find it, and if so, you're welcome for the free promo. I guess.
My Friend's Basement fans out
you should
there?
record here. I think that would make sense. And if not, that's my spinoff podcast. So nobody else take that idea. So I think we should actually get into the movie proper because we actually haven't really talked about it except for to imply that like structurally it's basically just like an elongated episode of the show.
Yeah, but I like it's animated like very theatrically. It's animated and a lot of the scenes are lit and look like an action movie. The New York influence. I love the product placement. I love that they had real Coca-Cola signs and then the next scene you'd see WickDonald's. It was like they had all these product placements lined up and then some of them fell through and they just couldn't animate around it. Like there's a scene where like Jed is holding a coffee cup in such a way where it's like there must have been like a Starbucks logo or something
and
on that.
They've like rotated it so that he doesn't, so
Yeah.
that it's not showing anymore. I actually kind of like that because it makes it feel like they're not so removed from our world that there aren't some symbols and brands that are recognizable to us, but at the same time,
I just want to know what happened in the future that Coca-Cola is still around, but McDonald's had to turn their M upside down. Like so many questions about this universe.
I like the implication that in the Cowboy Bebop universe, people of Irish descent don't have an MC at the beginning of the name. They all have a WC, like Wick Doherty or something like that. I think that's a lot more fun to imagine that they're just like, that's just how Irish people function.
That's just how Irish people function. I also love the implication that like, because they're not on Earth anymore. Like these are like, this is a city on Mars. I'm like, how does this work? Like, because it wasn't part of the series that like nobody, that entire generation had not been to Earth. Like Earth had been abandoned like decades before.
Does not part of the show take place on Earth?
They like go to Earth.
They do, but it's like a kind of, it's like Chernobyl there, right? Like you don't go. And I'm trying to remember the exact chronology. Most of the population is on Mars, correct?
Yeah.
And it's not on the moon or anything? Because I feel like there's a little bit of planet hopping, not a ton, but they are moving around.
They go to like, I mean, they hit up like every major planet. They go to a lot of space stations.
There's a Venus episode. But yeah, they're kind of just like I guess that's what it is. It's probably a lot of like space stations and bases and stuff like that.
Yeah, which is again part of the cowboy influence because in the Old West, like it's supposed to be like, oh, this is the frontier.
Yeah.
In the Old West, it was just a bunch of small towns dotted all around this big all the empty plains and deserts of, not empty, but the Westerns always kind of took on that like, I guess, I don't know, I played Red Dead Redemption and like between the different little towns are just these big expanses of like cacti and sand and the wild. And that's kind of like similar to how they present the solar system in this. We're like, oh, we got these little space stations, these little towns and these little, like this movie was different because this was a metropolis. I feel like in most of the other episodes of Cowboy Bebop, they go to a small base, they go to a floating casino, you don't really see them that much in like a big city.
Yeah, I feel like to establish the difference, the opening scene to this movie, which is like a really great action set piece, opens in a convenience store, which is pretty much
it's just a gas station robbery.
The most casual like way to communicate you are in a commercial space possible is like it's literally that like it's a stick up, right?
Yeah, it's just like they're stopping a stick up to get a bounty. Yeah, like it's one of the most like common things in like spy action, whatever movies, you know, oh, the store gets robbed, they stop a robbery, but to see it in this like Cowboy Bebop anime form, and also to see them right after like eating convenience store ramen.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. I feel like they're just kind of casually sitting around doing that all the time. The
ramen in that movie looks so good.
Why does anime food always look so good? Et cetera, et cetera.
Like, I also like the little thing they had in the future where like the ramen comes with its own little like hot pad on the bottom. So they just hit a button to like heat up.
And it just automatically like kind of shoots heat up through it.
Yeah, definitely really wasteful. And that would be horrible for the environment to have every ramen cup come with a battery that like heats it up. Like,
is that better or worse than styrofoam? How bad is styrofoam? I don't know, like on the relative scale.
I guess it'd be about this. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an environmental scientist.
Neither am I. I just am like, and I'm not putting you on the record. I guess I am because this is recorded, but I'm not putting you on the record and then I'm not holding you to it. But yeah, the movie's plot is kind of, it's convoluted in the way that the average episode is, in that like there's a lot of moving parts to keep track of, even if the plot itself is not super like complex. But how I remember it is that there is an organization led by a guy who seems to be driven by nothing other than just the fact that he's insane because he was exposed to a drug that he wants to expose to everyone else that will get them sick and die. And his name is Vincent, I think.
Yeah, it's a like I'm trying to think of like what other movie has a similar There's a bunch of other movies with a similar plot, but it's basically just this bad guy is trying to detonate a bomb that'll kill the whole city with a deadly disease. Like there's other variations of that story, but
Yeah,
it's
and he's for no other. It's. I mean, like you find out later that he has been exposed to the drug, and that's like driven him insane. But it seems, in terms of like his stated purpose, it seems to be no other reason than just he's a nihilist. He's just like, I just, I think people need to lose things to understand the value of, typical
yeah,
like villain stuff. And he's good and he's scary, but there's not a ton to him. This is mostly a movie just kind of about the characters that you know and get to spend time with. And the only reason they get involved with this, which I love, is that there's a bounty placed on his head. There's no other reason that they get into this other than
yeah,
like it's not altruism. And like every now and then the show will have an episode where it's about them helping somebody, but I feel like that only pops up when it's like this is Jet's ex-wife or somebody that one of us has a specific reason to like make exception for. And then obviously the movie gets to a point where like it's talking about they're doing something heroic because that's just the progression of where they've already been in the situation. That's just where they've taken themselves. But I like that, like, for the most part, this is just kind of another job.
yeah. I think that like you see that a lot. You see that a lot in westerns. You see that a lot in what you don't see it in is in samurai movies. Actually,
Mhm.
like I've seen a bunch of Kurosawa movies. I've seen a bunch of samurai movies and samurai like content and media, and a lot of that is, it's an honor thing. It's
Mhm.
loyalty and honor, and I think that's what part of this like cowboy influence is from. Is like, yeah, they're in westerns. They had like the heroic characters, but then
Mhm.
they also had the scoundrels and the bounty hunters and the people who were good, but only if you paid them for it.
Yeah. I feel like cowboys are kind of, maybe the appeal of them as a character archetype is that they do kind of exist between the two of them, because even though like a cowboy is literally just he's a herder, like that's
Yeah,
like what they are as a profession, but we ascribe heroicism to them, I think, because we just romanticize them in our vision of the American West. But you're right, yeah, they're mercenary. They're just kind of there
yeah,
because this is what they're getting paid for. And that doesn't even necessarily make them bad. I mean, sometimes they do bad things, but
yeah. I've seen like one of my favorite westerns is Johnny Guitar.
mhm.
I don't know if you've ever seen. You ever seen Johnny Guitar?
I've not seen Johnny Guitar.
You ever played Fallout New Vegas?
No, I'm not a big video
That
game person,
fair enough.
honestly.
So that movie, it's one of the very few westerns where not only is the main character a woman, but the villain is also a woman. And the movie ends with a shootout between two women. It's from the 50s.
Oh wow.
And the title
That old.
character, Johnny Guitar, is like, he's a drifter who, he used to be a killer. He used to be
Mhm.
bounty, and he vowed he's not going to kill anyone anymore. He vowed he's not going to pick up his gun anymore. So he just travels around with a guitar.
Mhm.
And it's like, so at the end of the movie, he's not the one. I mean, he's involved in the shootout, but it's mostly the two women who are shooting at each other.
Yeah. I'm
And
surprised that movie exists in the 50s, because I'm like, not just because it's rare that there'd be two women in like prominent
yeah,
roles, but I'm like, wasn't that like illegal at the time? They'd be like,
I know
you can't put two broads in a picture. You just can't do
it's
it.
Joan Crawford. That was probably the biggest
Yeah, that
reason why.
probably
It's like,
helps.
yeah, it was Joan Crawford is the main woman. She's got her high-waisted pants on and her gun, and she's like, you can't run me out of this town, and they try to run her out of town. Spoilers.
Yeah, that's okay. I feel like
I mean, it's kind of obvious.
you should have watched it by now. I feel like there's a lot of running out of town. That's not something we really do anymore, is run people out of town.
No, we don't.
But yeah, the movie itself, I had a pretty good time with it. Like I feel like that's kind of my take on it, is the same as the series. I'm like, I liked it a lot. I saw a lot of what I think can be very popular with like other things, because like when we talk about like these like genre like mishmashes, you compare it to something like Star Wars is obviously probably like the biggest example of this, but I also thought of kind of like how like the Matrix can will like combine with like kind of like techno-futurism with kung fu movies, and that one is more metatextually about like we have this world where we can, within the world of it, put these things together like purposefully. It's not just the
Yeah.
world we exist in. Why why does that work so well to do that sort of thing?
I don't know. I mean, it takes some talent to pull it off for sure. But I think a lot of it is just like the novelty of seeing, your expectations being subverted because it's combining genres like that. And I think that a lot of part of the appeal also of this series I'm realizing is, like I said, the nostalgia of it. Like, I remember now, like when I watched it the first time, like I liked it, but I was like a little bit underwhelmed. And then as years went on, it's like you get more nostalgic for it. And then you go back to it and you're like, oh, this is better than I remember. This is better than I remember. And I think a lot of series can't do that. Like, I think a lot of series, it's like you forget it after you watched it. But this series, the visuals and the music, more so than like the writing and the story, but the visuals and the music are so distinctive and so melancholy and nostalgic, and the music is such that it gets stuck in your head, like especially like the intro song and the credits song, and it's so
Yeah.
iconic. Evangelion was that way too. Like, I mean, if you watch the Netflix version of Evangelion, it's different. But when I watched it, like,
wait, both the theme song and the credit song are different in that one?
in Evangelion, it was Fly Me to the Moon. And now, like,
over the credits,
yeah,
though, right?
I always associate Fly Me to the Moon with that series. But in the Netflix version, they took that out because they didn't get the rights to it.
I'm assuming it's, just like a
Yeah.
streaming rights thing. It's so funny that happens with like, that happens with a lot of stuff where like you'll think that's the whole point of it, and they just have to put this like crappy royalty free stuff
Yep.
over it. Like, this is a really annoying example of it. But I feel like what is it? I think when they were making Scrubs, all the episodes have these like very specific of their time kind of annoying indie rock songs that Zach Braff often chose to play over the like, this is what I learned.
I did not know that.
Yeah. He's like, this is what I learned this week. But Hulu doesn't have the rights to any of that music streaming, so they just have to put like Muzak over it. Yeah, I know, we're ruining the sanctity of Scrubs. You know, everybody's favorite auteurist project.
I mean, to me, they're like, I love the way the music is used in TV shows and movies when it's done well.
Purposeful,
like,
you know.
Yeah, and to me, it's like that's so much part of the flavor and like part of what you remember, more so than the actual plot lines themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Is if the music is really distinctive.
Well, it's like what you said, how like they would get the music composed first, and then once they had the rhythms of the scene.
What was the name of the woman? The band was the Seatbelts, but I don't remember the name of the
band
woman.
is Seatbelts, and the composer, one sec, her name is Yoko Kanno.
That's right.
And I'm assuming Seatbelts is just like her band.
Yeah.
Right?
If you look up stuff about her, she was like really eccentric, and that's part of her appeal. Like, it's just,
I'm not familiar with her other work. Obviously, this stuff is great. It's just kind of like, I also think it's the sort of soundtrack that you can listen to without any, like, if you've never seen the show, without any emotional connection to the material itself, you will like really have a great time with the music.
A lot of it she wrote, like they would give her like, okay, we need music for a chase scene. And she would just write that, and then they would animate and figure out how to like do the timing around the music that she made, which is so unique. Like, almost every other show or series would bring like, here's what we filmed. We need you to make music that matches what we already filmed.
And I think on a series that makes the music all the more powerful, right? Like if she just made this for just like one feature, right? It would be one thing if they said, write us a piece and then we'll do a scene around it. Here, she says, write us a piece. And then every time we have a chase scene, we're going to use this music. So it means that all the chase scenes or all the fight scenes have a similar rhythm and cadence to them across the series.
Yeah.
So everything feels very fluid and purposeful, and like it all fits cohesively into one idea, and it starts from the music.
Yeah. And like that also just ties in because like part of the whole thing with Spike's character is, oh, he's like Bruce Lee. He moves like water. Like he goes with the flow, you know, it all is thematically connected.
What do you think of, like, in terms of like what the show is trying to present us of Spike? Is Spike supposed to always be like cool and right? I'm not 100% sure exactly what the intent is there.
I think it was like, to me, it was like, yeah, he's always supposed to be cool and right, but it's because he like pushes other people away and like is a loner, and therefore is only ever destined to like die in battle because like he doesn't have anything connecting him to the world. outside of his like friends who just keep leaving him.
I mean, he is like hyper competent. It's not like, it's like, if you ever seen Big Trouble in Little China,
Yeah.
where Kurt Russell spends that whole movie talking himself up and saying, I'm so awesome. And then before every single fight starts, he gets himself knocked out, or the end.
Yep.
Like, it's not like a subversion of that per se. It is a little bit more straightforward, but it feels not satirical, but more like kind of knowing. And that it's like, that's why I like the episode with the other cowboy so much, because it's like, without totally saying this guy sucks at what he does, it's like, we're a little tired of your shit.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen this before, Spike. I don't necessarily think that you need to, why don't you cool it just a little bit? I don't know. I think he's like a very stable presence to follow with. I think the way the characters are constructed is really nice here. Ed is a character who I think there are a lot of versions of this type of character, and they're usually really annoying. I can't really tell you what is different about Ed and why I like her.
I think it's just that Ed doesn't have that much dialogue. I think Ed is just mostly more about just the weird little sounds and movements. Like Ed is such a non-binary icon. Like the fact that people, when talking about this show, aren't really sure if they should refer to Ed as a he or a she, because the show never really like fully.
In the last couple episodes, when they run into Ed's dad, he says, he's like, oh, my son, or is it my daughter? And he doesn't actually ever come down conclusively on one side or the other.
Yeah. I feel like people have their own, like, people just say he or she, but it's like, to me, it's like, this is a little non-binary gender, whatever kid. Like, it's just so funny to me, because like, when I first watched this, like, I didn't know any kids that fell in that sphere. Now being an adult who, you know, makes videos with LGBTQ people all the time, like, oh yeah, it's just non-binary kid.
Yeah, it's very cool that she exists within the show the way that she does.
Yeah.
I feel like those are the pronouns they most frequently use.
Yeah.
But I like that it's just kind of left open to interpretation.
Yeah, like it's just,
that there isn't really a wrong, and I think that's what I like about her a lot, actually.
Yeah.
That it's like, well, there's no conclusive answer, because she's kind of like figuring it out, but also her whole character is not dominant. Like her whole character is not about that.
She's like a silly kid.
It's just like,
who's really good at hacking.
If anything, it's a thing that she throws out every now and then. She's like, am I a boy? Maybe. I don't know. And then she goes right back to like smacking on the keyboard.
Like that's just how kids are.
I feel like with regards to specifically like what actual with the show's kind of almost disinterest in finding a specific gender to assign her, and I don't know how, excuse me for not knowing exactly when these things are dated, but like using non-binary pronouns or non-binary terms, I feel like is a thing that media in the 90s and like even the 2000s was just, they literally just did the vocabulary was not widespread enough for anybody to know those sorts of things.
I mean, there was like, I don't know if you remember, there was one episode where like, I don't remember the exact context, but Faye is like investigating something and walks into someone showering, like another character showering.
Yes.
Like looks up and down and is like, what are you?
And I think I think the context of that is that it is an intersex person who is living on a planet where it's only men, so exposing yourself as anything other than a cis man is like dangerous for your physical safety.
That's the thing about this series. Like, even though it's so grounded in the West, they have this like, I don't think it's intentional, but like very futuristic view of like gender and sexuality, where it's not, they don't like really tie it down and impose these like old Western values on that kind of, they don't really even address it most of the time.
In that way, it's kind of like Star Trek, where just in the background of things, you'll see that this is, if anything, this is the sort of thing that we've just kind of as a society moved on from a little bit. And it's funny that that's there, because in Star Trek, it's meant to be utopian. Like this is a trait of a perfect society that we don't have to worry about explaining or justifying who we are to others. It's kind of nice to see it worked in seamlessly. It's like you said, it doesn't feel really purposeful. It just kind of feels like a world detail that they were like, that would make that would make this
Yeah.
our take on it, you know, that much more unique for it.
Yeah, for sure. And you see that sometimes in you see it a lot more in animated
Mhm.
things than in live action things for sure. Um I was trying to think of another example, but nothing else comes to mind.
The other one I can think of, it's obviously a little bit more modern. I think it is the 5th Chucky movie, is Seed of Chucky.
Oh yeah, people have told me that I need to do a video on that eventually.
And that movie is, let me look up exactly when it's from. I believe it's like mid 2000s, but Chucky has a non-binary child, and they spend him and his wife, it's 2004. Him and his wife spend most of that movie arguing, like he's like, this is my son, and the wife is saying, this is our daughter. And there gets to a point at the end of the movie where they finally decide to accept their child as being non-binary, and realizing that trying to force them into these things is like creating confusion and leading them to go murder and stuff like that.
What a weird plot line.
It's very weird, but they get to that point and you realize these specific filmmakers, at least it appears, are not aware of the existence of non-binary pronouns. So they'll, like, the big moment of acceptance comes, they just use it as the pronoun. And it's like, I can tell that this is well-intentioned.
Yeah.
Because it's not like that is ultimately, it's actually kind of sweet, even though like Common is dead in the background.
Yeah.
But it's just another example of like, even that recently, it just wasn't that, the terminology specifically feels like maybe it wasn't as widely known.
Yeah.
So even like, and obviously these aren't indicative of patterns. These are just kind of like, you know, focused attempts maybe, right? To try and portray something non-binary, and it working to varying degrees.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I'm not going to sit around and say like, oh, this is like a very like progressive. So like, it was a product of its time, very much so. And it's got some of those anime tropes, like Faye's outfit. I mean, I love her outfit, but she's showing a lot of skin.
I actually want to talk about this. This is a good transition to, you told me don't watch the live action show. Now I try. I made it 4 episodes.
Okay, because I didn't even try. So
if you've seen any of the promo images or anything like that.
I did. And I was like, this looks boring.
This is the type of show that I would be embarrassed to have a production assistant credit on. There's a quote from the creator of the original series that I want to read to you. He was asked about the live action adaptation, which he responded, "For the new Netflix live action adaptation, they sent me a video to review and check. It started with a scene in a casino, which made it very tough for me to continue. I stopped there and only saw that opening scene. It was clearly not Cowboy Bebop, and I realized at that point that if I wasn't involved, it would not be Cowboy Bebop. I felt that maybe I should have done this, although the value of the original anime is somehow far higher now." Basically saying, I couldn't make it past the opening scene. Maybe I could have saved this, but I think I'm fine.
I mean, you watched some of it, so you know why it was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
What it looked like to me, it was just that it just looked boring. It looked like a generic Netflix show that just happened to use these characters' names and like locations, but there was nothing really like, the music. I don't know about the music, but
the music is Yoko Kanno.
Okay, so
stuck with it. She, I think, is probably the biggest creative force who worked on the original, who had a strong hand in this.
But like visually, like it just looked like it didn't really catch it. Why people liked the original series?
No, it has that classic thing of all. This is really popular. This is a really big problem with like any sort of remakes, reboots, or whatever in the 2010s, especially. There's no reason for it to exist. Just some algorithm somewhere suggested that like if you put this name on something, people are more likely to click it. And there's clearly money put into it. It doesn't look. It looks expensive, but it does look like a really expensive fan film. Like somebody's rich kid made this thing. You know, like the costumes are really, with the exception of Faye, are really painstakingly recreated. Like they're like to the degree that like, you know, like when you're watching early superhero films and they haven't quite exactly figured out how to translate this into real life.
It looks very fake.
And it does, and it's shot with kind of like an indifferent attitude towards lighting, you know, this this very like we're just shooting it to document it to make sure that you see the thing that we spent a lot of money
shot
recreating.
reverse shot,
and it's got this kind of just like gray flat look to it that like cheap cameras
looks like it was
inexperienced
you can
operators
tell it was
did.
filmed in a set. They didn't do anything special with the lights. People were people at least chain smoking cigarettes?
No, that's
okay. Well, then that's part of it.
That's the thing is you kind of can't. Cigarettes are the weird sticking point that everybody has stayed puritanical about. Like you just can't put them in basically anything except for like an R-rated movie.
But so many scenes of Cowboy Bebop, like the ambiance was built by they're in a smoke-filled room. Like
and that kind of goes into the larger point I was going to make is that there are a lot of attempts to like, they try really hard to make John Cho's hair look like Spike's. They really, really try to recreate all the intricacies of like Jet's costume. But there is no attempt to recreate the style, you know, or like the way that it's presented to you. They just recreate the actual objects and then don't actually show them to you the same way.
Very by the numbers. They poured all their money into the art department and forgot to pay anyone else.
Yeah. I want to talk about Faye a little bit. It is like, it's the way that there was a real obsession with like changing the way that a female character is written to like with this attitude of like, we're going to modernize it and bring it up to, you know, the modern day. First thing they do, and obviously this is like a contentious issue in anime in particular. The character, like you said, obviously has an extremely sexualized costume that would be impractical for a human woman to actually wear for the duration of a show. That being said, it feels like they really purposefully like changed it so that it like covers everything up and have kind of equated desexualization with empowerment.
Yeah. And that's like, because like you can have both. Like you can have like, you know, femme fatale, like characters that are like women characters that are like very sexually attractive, but also very tough and very like, it's just like you gotta toe the line and figure out the right balance and like, but I imagine it really stands out when she's the only one whose costume they changed and everyone else looks the same.
That's the thing is that your kind of like extremely devoted approach to recreating every other object of it makes her look like she's so not of a piece with this thing. And there's also, so there's a one I'll say, Vicious and Julia.
Yeah.
They're like fairly large characters who have like a subplot in every single episode.
Okay, so that's way different too.
Yes, that's the thing is like there's a real, it's very like kind of MCU brained in that it has to have this huge lore dump and everything has to be about backstory instead of like, it seems really, it's not content to just have episode be about here's a mission they go on, right?
It also sounds like they introduce all of the characters right at the beginning.
I watched 4 episodes. I didn't see Faye is actually of those is only in episodes 1 and 4. She's not in 2 or 3.
Okay.
There's been no Ed thus far, and if there is any beyond this, it's something I'll never know.
Yeah.
I can't make it any farther. I really tried. I was like, you got to do your homework for this. You got to know the context. It was like really.
I don't know anyone who watched like the whole thing.
You know, I feel kind of bad like shitting on it, but I'm like the whole thing is like I would say like aside from all the performances are very bad. Like I love John Cho. I like him in basically every other thing I've seen him in. But he seems so hamstrung by you can only do so much if the script is bad. And it's a lot of like really overly quippy dialogue.
Oh yeah.
That is trying to be clever. The actress who plays Faye, I'm about to insult her, so I don't want to say her name. It is like a ruinously bad performance.
Oh.
They've turned her into kind of like a kid sidekick vibe to it, where like
so stupid.
everything she says has the cadence of like, actually, dickbag, this is how it's gonna go.
One of those.
And I'm like, I don't know if just the character as written is so bad, or if she like has any merit as a performer. I don't think I've seen her in anything else.
Well, this makes me wonder, why didn't they just try to like adapt the series? Like, isn't it all like they try to come up with their own episodes? And
from what I've seen of it, they seem to be kind of it's more like a remix, right? They're taking elements the Vicious and Julia stuff, which is like their grand total what, in like 4 episodes of the original series. They've already beaten that record by the track record of what I've seen so far. They're like, I'm not kidding. So far, Vicious has been in more episodes than Faye. Like that's how.
Well, I know that a lot of people are really liking the new One Piece live action series.
Yeah,
and apparently part of that is they are actually adapting the series. That's
a movie, right? Or is it
a series?
Oh,
on Netflix,
wow. Okay.
A live action series. People are really into it. And from what I've heard, it's because number one, they are adapting the series, but like condensing it because One Piece is really long. So like the first episode is like the first 8 episodes of the show or something. That, and they stayed like, they didn't try to make him like, oh, look 1-to-1 like they do in the anime, but they kept the things that people liked, like a lot of the visual styles. Apparently it's just really well done compared to Cowboy Bebop, where they did not understand what people liked about the series and just like tried to like, they thought, oh, it's the characters, it's the way they look, and didn't even think about, I guess, the mood or the vibe or anything else.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's like it's just recreating the actual, like almost like props basically. And they're like, did you remember? Like there is like a pan shot over some space where you see the Whack-Donald's sign, and I'm like, you haven't done that. That's just that. I'm like, yes, I can tell you watch the show the same way I watch the show, and you know all the references. But I feel like that is the misconception with the way a lot of reboots and reinterpretations are done. Is they're like, well, they're gonna want to see this, right? It's kind of how like the new Ghostbusters movie was like. Is they're like, it's got like over 200 Easter eggs in it or whatever. And it's like, look, it's the toaster from Ghostbusters 2. It's sitting there in the back of the lab.
Yeah. And I've seen sometimes where I like that. Like there are some instances where I think that kind of like, nostalgia grabbing stuff is fun, but there's like, you can only do it once.
Yeah.
And I think they got to really be sparing about it now, because like every series has done that to some extent.
The over reverential tone with which these like Ghostbusters is like, I actually think the funniest example, because the original movie is a silly movie about a bunch of losers, and then Dan Aykroyd gets his dick sucked by a ghost. Like it's not even serious. It didn't take itself seriously.
Yeah.
And now the new movie is, they're like, Ghostbusters, of course, the greatest heroes ever known to mankind. We must treat this with the utmost importance. I'm just now realizing maybe I shouldn't be referencing Ghostbusters in something I'm going to put online, because I feel like people will get mad at me.
I think that people like, for Ghostbusters anyway, like I feel like that was held in more reverence, and then
it's weird that it was. It's mostly just a good comedy in my mind.
People don't even like the sequel that much. Like Ghostbusters 2.
Ghostbusters 2 sucks.
People don't even really like that one. Like it's just off one movie.
Yeah, the people who made it are like,
some people were really into like the animated series, and some people were really like I heard the video game from like 2009 is good.
I think that's like where a lot of the nostalgia comes from, is that like it was a Saturday morning cartoon, and that stuff really hooks its claws into you a lot more than you maybe realize. But taking it back a little bit to like continuations and reboots with anime specifically, like you said, it sounds like people like the One Piece one that's happening now. Is there ever artistic merit to any of these things beyond just, this is a popular thing, let's make it again? Because I understand that like these are commercial things. Their first and foremost priority should be to make money. Can these things not also like have an artistic reason to exist?
To me, there's people like my parents, for example. My parents are never going to watch an anime series ever. That is never going to happen. But if you tell them to watch a live action series or a live action movie, to me, it's like they're getting a new audience that would never otherwise experience this story. So part of the problem with the Cowboy Bebop one is that they did not understand why people liked the original series and what made it good.
So they just have a bad, like in their minds, the animated show is totally out. Like it's just out of the equation.
My parents are never going to watch anime.
So like, what is Cowboy Bebop? It's just a bad live action show. That's all it is to people who are like that. And this actually, I think we talked about this on our Evangelion episode, the weird way that anime is kind of like ghettoized in the way that we talk about it, that it's not it's a less legitimate art form, or it's a less worthy one, or that it's only for kids. I mean, you see that with like I know with the Oscar
Well,
nominations
in America anyway. I think that
Yes,
it really depends
yes,
on what
that's true.
country you're in. Like obviously like in Japan, like anime movies like have always sold really well. You get
Mhm.
people of all ages going to them. But there's some other countries too where it's like that. Like, you know, anime is apparently really popular in Mexico and in Brazil. Anime is
There's a
really
big Japanese population.
yeah. Um there's other places where like it's similar, but America is not one of those places because in America most animated films are for kids.
Mhm.
Animation is associated with being for children. And if it's not associated with being for children, then it's like Family Guy
It's like dirty, basically.
or The Simpsons.
There's no the idea of like I mean, The Simpsons is actually
The Simpsons is
it's
like in the middle.
It's crazy that is basically the most successful TV show ever because there's really nothing else that kind of exists. Like it's like Family Guy veers more towards into the like
Raunchy
pop
culture
references.
references.
It's like it all exists in a defined adult realm. The Simpsons is for a lot of its run arguably a family sitcom, which means that it doesn't have many contemporaries.
Yeah, like it has, and there's a lot of like when you look at anime series, there's some that are very obviously this is for children, like
Mhm.
Hello Kitty, for example,
Sure.
and then there's some where it's like this is obviously not for children, like Evangelion or Attack on Titan, stuff that's like very violent and very like existential, and it's those things in the middle though that I think really catch. Like if Cowboy Bebop, if the live action show had turned out good, I could have showed it to my parents because that it's it's got something for everyone. There's a kid, there's a cute dog, there's
I really think it's just so accessible. We talked a lot about like what are good entry points for someone who's not super into anime. And I think you brought up Cowboy Bebop at the time as an example of something that is a really good place to start. I definitely agree with that, especially with my last series.
Yeah, well,
and
if you'd watched it in English too, like
I think I'm probably going to like soon. Like
yeah,
normally,
I mean, at least like watch like an episode or two.
Yeah. I was going to like do like maybe like the first couple and then like one or two that I really like, and I just ended up running out of time before this episode. But yeah, I think that it's like it's a great place to start. It's really approachable. It's good in the way that a lot of other things that American audiences are going to be used to finding things good anyway. Like you compare it to so you don't have to, it doesn't feel foreign. I think arguably because it's trying to ape, Western sensibilities.
Like appealing to Western sensibilities versus like, but even like his follow-up anime, Samurai Champloo, which is a samurai story, is also appealing to Western audiences because the music is all hip hop.
Yeah.
And like this director, Watanabe, he just knows how to appeal to people on both sides. Like that's why his animes have all been so successful, is because he knew how to appeal to more than just the local Japanese market.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think my big takeaway here is like this is such like a great little deep dive to do, especially because it's not that deep. You can consume all of it without
you can watch the whole series in like a couple of weeks or less,
and without getting sick. Because that's the thing is, I'm like, I actually think like you were talking about like I definitely need to check out the dub. I'm like, I may just like run through it again like soon. You know what I mean? Because I was like, I just liked being there. And I think it is the type of thing that it will reward immediate revisiting.
Yeah.
Especially I kind of want to do it specifically with it fresh in my mind so that I can go and be like, this is what I thought about this, this, or this, and then just immediately jump right into it.
Yeah. And of course there'll be like other details that you didn't notice before because now you already know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually am more, even though I enjoyed the back half more, I'm more looking forward to the first half. Because going in with like all the foreknowledge now, I think I'll be more equipped to get more out of those. Whereas like I already feel like I got a lot out of the back half,
Yeah.
So like there's less to make. I don't need to make up with those. Those would just be good things that I know I like. And
I need to watch the whole series because I watched the whole series at the end of high school, and then I've just gone back and watched like random episodes here or there to show someone this episode or that episode. But it's been a long time since I watched the whole thing from beginning to end.
Well, let me know if you start. do a watch along on my own and text you.
I
about
will, because like
I would kind of love the excuse, honestly.
back when I watched it, also like I watched it on 123anime.com and like a website that was full of like pop-up ads in like 480p. So now I could watch it in like full HD, full color, like all the more reason to. Like seeing this movie on the big screen was so cool because I wasn't used to seeing the characters in this high quality.
I really liked, like I said, this one really does just kind of feel like an elongated episode. I really liked that the big grandeur one is the one I got to go see on a screen.
Yeah.
And actually, like this was something when I was looking up, like, how often does this happen? The Quad Cinema, a small theater, you probably know where it is.
Yeah.
It's near. A couple years ago, they actually played the entire series in, I think, 6-episode chunks. You would buy 4 tickets all at once. You'd pay like $30 or whatever to come back, and then you would just come in, watch 6 episodes of Cowboy Bebop, come back next Tuesday or whatever. It's the sort of thing that I'm like, we just did a TV show. We watched the Nathan Fielder show, The Curse, at Film at Lincoln Center. And I was like,
they played the whole show?
They did in 2-episode spurts. We didn't go to all of them.
Okay.
But like, without like spoilers, the last episode of that is like, it really bumps up in terms of like set piece and stuff. I was really glad to see that episode and thing. And I was like, oh, maybe you don't need to see an entire series there, but like getting to see the segments that they put more resources into is really
well, that
great.
was like, I just saw one of the 2 Gurren Lagann movies, and those cover the whole series, but it's like super condensed. It's really just the big action set pieces that you want to see on a theater screen. I would still, like, in that case, recommend seeing the series instead of the movie, unless you're seeing it on a theater screen, because that's what was special about it, was seeing it in 4D.
Yeah, you saw it in 40X.
Yeah,
so
which
like
is
they were like squirting water at you
and like the seats are shaking, and like they there's this like thing in the back of the chair that like anytime Simone got hit, the back of your chair would like, sounds like someone was kicking the back of your chair. Like it's, I want to see more 4D. That was fun. I remember like years ago they released The Disaster Artist in 4D. And people were telling me, oh yeah, the seats shake during the Johnny and Lisa sex scene in the room.
I know, like, we got to do a 4DX episode at some point.
Find some like really unique one.
I think I'm going to look out for stuff like Gurren Lagann, like something that's not just a new release, like a specialty. Did you go to Times Square for that?
Yeah, it was Times Square.
Yeah. That's, I think, the one that everybody always tells me to check out. But
it felt like a roller coaster.
Yeah, I know. Like it's like fully immersive, and also like, I don't know. That's like a fun type of theatrical thing. I should definitely go talk.
Well, the fact someone had to go in and program all the different parts in the movie where the seat would shake, where you'd get hit, where the water would come out, where there'd be like an air blast effect. Someone had to go in and program with the time codes when that would happen.
I feel like it's kind of like turning it into like a theme park type thing.
It is.
So if I could find something that kind of has like, doesn't have to literally be a theme park movie, although I guess if they were playing like Pirates of the Caribbean or something, sure. I don't know. I could do that. But yeah, I don't know. We gotta beef it up, change up the format a little bit, see if we can go
for sure.
Try different things like that. But that sounds like so much fun. My final discussion question that I always ask my guest is, what movie, no matter how obscure or limited in appeal, that if you saw it was playing somewhere, we would definitely have to go see it and sit down and talk about it?
There's definitely some that come to mind, but there's the one that's coming to mind right now because of what we were talking about is there's a Hideki Anno movie called Ritual that is like impossible to find in America.
It's not a horror movie, is it?
No, it's all I know about it is that it's on the top 250 highest rated movies. It's live action. He made it like after he finished End of Evangelion. He's like, I'm going to make a live action movie instead of an animated movie. Mm-hmm. I just know it's really mysterious and like, it feels very much like an Evangelion live action kind of vibe. There's no like mechs or anything, but it's like, I don't know. I don't want to spoil it for myself, so I've never looked it up. But
yeah,
at this point, I'm probably gonna have to order like an old DVD because it's rare.
I saw it on like a list of when we did the Evangelion episode. I was looking into like what are his other live action credits basically, and I don't think I had looked into any.
The film is called Ritual. It's on the Letterboxd top 250. You cannot stream it. You cannot rent it. I think the DVD's been out of print for 20 years.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's the thing. And then you'd have to find region free with Blu-ray and DVD is so weird because it's like you can find a region I believe this is how it works. You can find a region free Blu-ray, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee it will play all regions of DVD as well. Like the different formats are. So like you might have to like find like a specific machine to watch this one movie.
Yeah.
So
and I don't know how it works for like I have a Blu-ray drive on my desk, but I have a Mac, so you can't watch Blu-rays on it, but you can extract Blu-rays on it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, does that work also if it's like a foreign like this region? I'm like, I don't know.
A long-term like goal of this show is I would like to start movies like this that nobody is going to program. I would love to like find a way to at some point get that played. So I don't know. Maybe I'll start looking into that, seeing if we would find somebody who'd be willing to put on. I feel like if you're like, here's this rarely seen Hideaki Anno movie, you say, oh, it's from the Evangelion guy. I feel like people will come out for that sort of thing. You know?
Like I'm actually, where's my phone? I'm just gonna really quick look up like it's called Ritual.
I think what it is there's like a 70s horror movie that's also called Ritual, and that's why I'm mixing it up. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's probably something that like some film print of it exists somewhere.
Yeah, like it says here that someone actually uploaded it to the Internet Archive last year, but I don't think there's English subtitles on this. I think it's only I think someone uploaded the Japanese Blu-ray rip onto Internet Archive with no subtitles.
I know that the Japan Society has done live subtitling for things that they've shown there before.
Interesting.
So I don't know. I wonder if that would be something that is worth bringing to their attention.
Yeah, this is Internet Archive, but there's no subtitles on this.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, we'll keep looking for that. But I want to say thank you to Nicole for
Ava.
Ava. I'm sorry.
Nicole, Ava.
Yes.
I go by many names.
Yes. I want to thank Ava for coming to the screening, for coming and doing this episode with me. It's always a fun time. If you ever have an entire series that you'd like me to go watch and do, are there any other series that like would fit in this without me watching 200 episodes of something? Are there any other movies that we could theoretically even go see without a huge, like, obviously I can't do that type burden? Like, is this repeatable? Or have we just done the two?
You'd have to, okay, wait, I can actually tell you right now. Let me just, because there's Signal in here, which is incredible. Basements don't normally have Signal.
Well, my friend's basement does.
Where's the top? Okay. See, a lot of these other series, like I was going to say Death Note, but Death Note doesn't have a movie. I mean, it has like...
It's a live action one, right?
Yeah, a Netflix live action one that's bad.
Oh, it's probably good. It's probably really great.
Yeah, they changed. I know that one, they changed the setting to Seattle.
Is Willem Dafoe in that?
Yeah. Willem Dafoe is in it. They made it Seattle. They made the main character a white guy.
These are all good choice. I don't know what
great choices.
Sounds like a successful mainstream.
There's
film.
Madoka Magica, which a new movie in that series is coming out soon. That's like 12 episodes and like
I think
3 movies.
I think Lily likes that series. Like I think she's watched
it. Starts off as like a very stereotypical like magical girls transforming anime, and then gets dark really fast. Like it takes some really dark twists that you're not expecting at all really quickly.
You know, there's one I've actually seen before. I haven't seen the series, but I've seen the movie that I think might kind of fit the bill is Revolutionary Girl Utena. I feel like is a similar amount of like overall like franchise, like homework to do basically for it. The movie's really weird. I would like to have a little bit more context for what's going on there.
Another series that I was going to say that ends with a good movie is Haruhi Suzumiya. The finale movie of that series is on the top 250 also. But that one, do you know the concept of that series?
I actually watched that one as a teenager.
Oh,
that
you
was
did?
Like, I watched it in like 11-minute increments on YouTube. Yeah.
Okay, so you get it.
So I know the incredibly convoluted concept of that one.
The other thing I was going to suggest is Demon Slayer, because that series is still going, and anytime there's a new movie,
it's like a relatively new, right?
Yeah, it started in 2019. the first season is like 20 episodes. Season 2 is like 12. Season 3 is like 10.
Mm-hmm.
They released a film that they ended up just reanimating into the TV series, but they're doing that.
Is that
work.
what's called an OVA?
Yes.
I'm like having a hard time as I'm getting more into anime, having a harder time
OVA.
defining.
I think I don't know. I don't know the definition, but with Demon Slayer, like it's still ongoing, and I imagine that for the finale, they'll probably put it out as a movie first, and then put it on TV. Like
I don't know. Well, we will keep an eye out for if that gets a release. Maybe that would be a fun one to talk about.
Yeah, I would love to go see that on a big screen.
Yeah, but learned a lot on this episode. Learned a lot on the last episode. Anything besides your YouTube channel to plug?
No, just go watch my YouTube videos. Yes. I got to pay rent.
Evasive. So thanks again, Nicole.
Of course.
For coming here. I want to say thank you to Lily Steinberg for her social media management, promotional artwork, and producing the show. Thank you to Kristen Eng for our logo artwork that goes along well with that promotional artwork. This has been Bad First Impression. You can find the show on all socials at BFI Pod. Please help us out the show by rating, reviewing, and following on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. Starting either this week or last week, I can't remember. If you are watching this, you're actually getting the episode a day early before it's out on podcasting platforms. So thanks for being here. If you're listening to it the day afterward, also thank you for listening. If you have questions, suggestions, or thoughts, you can reach out to us on Instagram or any other socials, or you can email us directly at mailbag@bfipod.com. As always, I've been your host, Devin Warner. You can find me on social media at WhatIfDevin. And until next time, see you, Space Cowboy. Had to do it, though.